Now, Theo, good to talk to you. Thanks for coming on today.
Yeah, my pleasure. I finally got on the show. It's awesome. Love it.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time. I know you did some great work in Candace Malcolm's documentary, Calgary in Crisis, a couple years back. So it's good to talk to you here. What is it that attracted you to this convoy?
Well, I think what attracted me to politics in the first place, um, I didn't really know a whole lot about politics. You know, I grew up in a family where we didn't really talk about politics, or I wasn't around politics, and to be honest with you, I didn't know if I was liberal, conservative, libertarian, patriot, nothing, right? And 2015, Trump comes down the escalator at Trump Towers and, announces to the world he's going to be president. And I'm like, what? Well, why does this guy want to be the president? And I'd met Trump a few times in New York when I was playing there. And to be honest with you, I really liked him. He was a genuine guy and, shook my hand, looked me in the eye, was interested in my family and all those other things. So I started following politics, right? And so I started obviously watching CNN because that's what everybody does. And I was like, something's just not right, right? So I switched over to Fox, and then I went, oh, okay, I get it, okay. and then really figured out that I was a patriot, freedom lover, freedom of choice, freedom in general. And
so the convoy to you is about freedom and patriotism then, right?
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. It's the greatest act of patriotism we've ever seen in our country, right? Because I've represented my country 10 times in my life, all right? And I put the maple leaf on my chest. And any big hockey event in Canada, the country shuts down for 2 weeks. Everybody gets their red and white jersey. They put their flag up. They make signs, or they come to the World Junior, or they come to the Olympics. And it's about pride. It's about, all these things. And so what I've seen is the country has been in, a depression for 2 years because our fearless leader and the Canadian media have just constantly pumped fear into the minds of Canadians, right? And so everybody went along with it because that's what Canadians do. We're nice and compliant and all those things. And then all of a sudden, a bunch of truckers get together and they say, yeah, you know what? Enough's enough, right? Enough is enough. And what happens? People start coming out of their houses, grabbing their red and white, things they have in their house, and they're coming out in droves. And to me, that's the Canada that I know, and that's the Canada that I grew up in. But unfortunately, the Liberals, who are all completely insane and out of their minds and should not be anywhere near Ottawa, are trying to push this narrative that has been tried 24 times in the history of our planet, and every single time it's failed. And the only byproduct of this type of ideology is what? Death, which is what we're also seeing at the same time. So I don't want any part of that, to be honest with you. And I would say the majority of people do not want that, right? And that's exactly what we're seeing, right? That's exactly what we're seeing. And now there is a panic in the Liberal Party or the Uni Party, whatever you want to call it, and the Canadian media. Like, these people hate our country. They hate it. They hate our country. They hate the people that live in it. They don't want patriot. They don't want any patriots. They don't want anybody to be prideful. Nothing. It's ridiculous, and it's a joke.
Let me ask you about the patriotism component, because one thing that I've seen in increasing numbers in the last few months in particular, I think this winter has broken a lot of people, is a lot of them who have the means to leaving Canada. People that take up residence in Florida, people are going to Mexico, a couple that are going to Europe, which has never historically been the place that you think of as being freer on a day-to-day basis than here. But people are leaving the country, and I understand the pessimism. Every time we've been plunged into another lockdown, worse for me here in Ontario than for you in Alberta, I'm like, oh, do I just like pick up stakes and go? Whereas what I am seeing now in this convoy, there's a lot of anger, but anger comes from a place of hope in a way, because you have to feel that something is worth getting angry about.
Don't confuse anger with passion.
Mm-hmm. That's fair.
Those two things always get flipped around. This has nothing. To just finish this has nothing.
There's people are hopeful now, I feel, this week.
Right. But take anger out of the thing, because I've been listening to the truckers. I've been on spaces. There is no anger. None at all. Zero. It's called passion and love of country, which Trudeau hates our country, hates the citizens of our country. It's unbelievable. It is a passionate cry to the people who are asleep. Please wake up. Please wake up, because we're going down a road that we don't want to go down.
He's tried to project that hatred onto the unvaccinated specifically. The vilification we've heard in terms of, oh, they're racist, they're misogynist, they're unacceptable, all of these things. But it's interesting because that's been working in some ways up until now. But the last week in particular, as this convoy has gone on, a lot of the people vaccinated, triple vaccinated, no vaccine, whatever, that are coming are saying that this is not about that anymore. So I think something has twigged in people's minds where they are realizing, no, you can't just vilify large segments of the country. If you go for them, you're also coming after us. That seems to be the feeling.
And there's absolutely zero science that says the vaccinated are the dangerous, right? Him in hiding, that's perfect. We love it. We don't want to see your face. We don't want to hear your rhetoric anymore. It's perfect, right? So, like I said, there's no science that, like, and the narrative is gone, right? Gaslighting has gone out of style. Saying that we're a white supremacist movement. I'm a Métis person from Manitoba. I'm the first Métis racist person in Canada. You know what I mean? So the narrative doesn't work anymore. And that's why these truckers got in their trucks and came to Ottawa. And then they dragged everybody else, with them. And so, as far as I'm concerned, this is over. Whatever the Liberals and Conservatives, NDP, the Bloc, all that, it's over. We know exactly what you're trying to do, what you're trying to put on this country. So it's over. It's over.
You mentioned being Métis, and I have to ask about that because more than any other demographic group, not that I like segmenting the country based on those terms, but more than any demographic group, Indigenous Canadians have more of a right to be distrustful of government than anyone else, just given the history of Crown Indigenous relations. And we know that Indigenous people have less, on average, vaccination in their population than non-Indigenous people, and they're as such disproportionately affected by mandates and vaccine passports. And it's amazing that the government that proclaims reconciliation as its first and foremost goal isn't interested in the effect of its push for vaccination on populations that have reasons to be skeptical of government-enforced medicine.
Yeah. Well, anybody who uses the word misogynist, racist, whatever, that's a projection. Trudeau has been caught how many times? Blackface? Like, Trudeau needs to resign. He absolutely needs to resign. And, but to get back to, the Indigenous people of Canada, I've done most of my healing in the Indigenous community. And I believe that the Indigenous community has the greatest untapped resource of medicine on the planet. Because when I got COVID, I called a really good friend of mine who's a medicine man down in Cardston, Alberta. And He came, dropped off some medicine. I did 4 doses of his medicine and I was as good as new. So, like, it's unfortunate that, you know, a lot of people can't really actually see what's going on, you know, and to be honest, Andrew, in the last 2 years, all of my sexual abuse has come back. All of it. All of it. Why? Because the same tactics that my abuser used against me is the exact same tactics that the government has used to get people to obey, line up, and get these shots. And it's been just a constant 24 hours a day, 7 days a week campaign to get people in this mass formation psychosis. And because the majority of the population is traumatized, right? Previously, they've been traumatized, you know? And so COVID-19 is the most traumatic event that's happened since World War II. Now we've added another layer of trauma on top of already traumatized people. And so when you're traumatized, guess what? You can't think critically because you're just surviving day to day. You can't. And the abuse from the government feels normal and comfortable, right? And that's why we've seen people go along, you know, with this globalist narrative, is because people are living in their trauma again. And thank God I have enough tools in my toolbox and people around me, surrounding me, that I've been able to, you know, manage what's been going on. And I'm not the only one that feels this way. The hundreds of thousands of Canadians that have reached out to me and texted me, they're all going through the same thing that I've been going through, because my government is abusing me constantly, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. But nobody talks about this stuff. Nobody talks about this stuff. And you know how they counteract my point that I just made? I'm a crazy conspiracy theorist. No, I'm a critical thinker is what I am. And I've been in this space for 15 years. And so I know, and I know what abuse is. And I said to myself a long time ago, when I saw abuse, that I was going to speak up, because I found my voice in 2009 when I wrote that book. And I made a promise to myself, if I saw it, I would never allow it to stay silent, right? And when you shine a light on abuse, this is exactly what happens. When you bring the abuse out into the light, what happens? Truckers get in their trucks. People come out of their house. You know, that's what happens. And all of the lies have been exposed.
Let me ask you then, Theo, about where this goes, because you're right that truckers and their allies have a great deal of passion. They're taking that to Ottawa. They're making a point. People around the world are paying attention. Everyone saw that interview you did on Laura Ingram's show on Fox News, and all of this. We're seeing more and more of this. But you've also talked about how the government has not really cared about the people who are protesting, or about, in many cases, the welfare of Canadians in general. So what motivation is there for the government to respond? I mean, how does this get a result and not just fizzle out and then everyone goes back and the world goes to the way it was 2 weeks ago?
It's not. It's not going away. These guys aren't leaving. Nobody's going home. The truckers are staying, and they're staying until their demands are met, right? And it's going to be interesting to see how the government responds, right? And Trudeau's backed into a corner. He's in a corner, and you can see it, right? If you look at his nonverbal communication, not what's coming out of his mouth, look at his nonverbal communication. He has no idea what to do. He has no clue what to do. And so, the simple fact that, a small fringe society in Canada is coming to Ottawa, he's in for a rude awakening, right? He is truly. And it's a peaceful protest. And if you know anything about patriots, we're peaceful. We're very peaceful. And we love being together. We love sharing ideas together. And so, yeah, from what I understand, these guys are staying until something happens, right? And the simple fact that every small business in Canada just agreed to open their doors to every single human in Canada tomorrow, what does that tell you? That we've had enough, right? Enough is enough. No more complying, no more masks, none of that stuff. We're not, like I said, the narrative is gone. It's gone. Vaccines don't work. Masks don't work. Lockdowns cause severe damage mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually. We're done. We're done. The narrative's over. It's gone. Finished.
Theo Fleury, former NHL great and Olympian. A pleasure, sir. Thanks so much for coming on today. Great to see you.
You too, man. Thank you.